And welcome again to the Aligned on AI podcast, looking at real business conversations, real AI outcomes. Today, I'm joined by Mark Davies, based in Shropshire in the UK. Mark runs 3 family businesses, including hard to find wines. And if you've ever wondered how the wine business stays afloat when costs are rising from every direction, Mark is living it in real time. Mark has started using AI in a very practical, light touch way, especially to speed up marketing and product content like tasting notes, which is one of those small team, big workload wins that a lot of small and medium enterprises can relate to. So today we'll focus on the wine side, what's changing in the market, what's getting harder, what's still working, and then we'll bring it into AI, what's genuinely useful right now for businesses similar to Mark's, and what's better left to humans with good taste and a strong palate. Mark, welcome. Great to have you with us. For anyone who doesn't know you, what's your story in a nutshell, and how did Hard to Find Wines come about?
Hi, Carl. Yeah. So been in the wine business for just over 20 years now. So in the early days, sort of early 2000s, we started out as a lot of wine companies at the time, as a mail order business. So, unbelievably, there are still wine merchants out there at the moment that will send you a piece of paper through the post. You'll fill it in and send it back to them with a check, which is just unbelievable that that's still happening now. But it is. And we were pretty early adopters, sort of in the mid 2000s, going into e-commerce. Spent a lot of money over the years and have redeveloped our website probably sort of 5-6 times already so far. So we're on the sort of the 6th increment of our website. And each time it gets that little bit easier. And the last time we went onto a new e-commerce platform, which is Shopify, AI was just really sort of starting to happen. And rather than using these sort of IT companies that were charging us tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds for e-commerce sites, this latest website that we've developed, we did all in-house with fairly limited IT knowledge, I have to say, but really, really intuitive and quite easy to get to grips with. So although we're mainly on the wine side, which obviously is a slightly more fun way of spending your time than IT, we've actually in-house with only sort of 2 or 3 people on a few hours a week, managed to develop a website and an e-commerce platform from scratch.
That sounds really good. So, I mean, what sort of customers are you aiming for? What's your mix? Is it I don't know? Is it enthusiasts? Is it the people looking for gifts? Is it for corporate buyers, repeat buyers? Is it
Yeah, I mean,
businesses? What have you seen?
we started off predominantly in the early days looking to get new customers from the vineyards themselves. So somebody would go on holiday to South Africa or New Zealand or California and would, again, in those early days, pick up an order form and fill it out and pop it back to us. Since then, we've again automated that, so it comes through the e-commerce platform. But very much we're sort of not on the business to business element. So we are focused on retail, and we are probably now looking at around about a sort of 50 to 60% return rate. So a lot of existing customers that come back to us again and again. And obviously that's where on the marketing side, it's getting those customers and making sure that we don't lose them. We offer them new things and can continue to work with them and sell them products.
Yeah, I think that's a very cross-sector sort of wish for how to go about business. Repeat business is the best business. So completely understand that. So how do you decide what to buy? What are the signals that you trust? Is it supplier relationships, demand patterns, customer requests? How does that work?
Yeah, again, it's changed a little bit over the last probably even sort of 5 years. So originally, a lot of it was actually me going tasting wines and guessing to a certain extent what people would want to buy. Obviously, price points reasonably important in those choices of what we're looking to buy. As we've gone on, again, we're using a lot more data now than we were in those early days, where it was a little bit of a sort of lick your finger and stick it in the air. We're using some Google Analytics, and we're actually, before we would take on wine, which certainly at the 50, £100 a bottle mark, can quickly sort of snowball into quite a lot of stock holding. So before we actually buy quite a lot of wines or even taste them, we'll look at the analytics behind those wines, see how many people are looking for them, what the likelihood is that we'll actually be able to sell those wines going forwards. So we're using data to really push us in the right direction in terms of what stock holding should we have. Currently, we have probably about £4 to £5 million worth of wine in store, which some of it is in our picking warehouse, some of it's in more long-term storage down in Surrey. So it's quite a big thing for us in terms of cash flow and keeping all that stock in situ while we're trying to sell it. The other thing we probably do a little bit different to other companies is we will actually look at wines, and again, the data on that wine in 5 years' time, is it going to pre-value? And there's plenty of sources now that we can use to identify those wines. So we can buy it today, knowing full well that if we sit on it for sort of 4, 5, 6, 7 years tops, generally with us, we will have a market for it in that period of time, and we will be looking to return on the capital investment that we put into that body of wine. So it has got quite geeky in terms of we are now using data a lot more rather than just going to a nice plush hotel in London, sipping a few wines and picking fairly random stuff that I like, but might not necessarily be that commercial.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a lot of stock you've got tied up there. I mean, is that one of the biggest constraints for you, or is it other things? I'm sure there are shipping costs, duties, the competition. What are the constraints that you've got at the moment that really, I don't know, have the biggest effect on your business?
Yeah, I mean, just generally costs have gone up across the board. So whether it be business rates, whether it be shipping costs, packaging, and actually our shipping costs in terms of not necessarily just bringing the wine in, but also putting it into a box and delivering it somewhere in the UK. So all of those costs have gone up. In terms of the actual sort of stock holding constraints, I probably actually see it as a little bit of a positive in that it does restrain me a little bit. If we were to go out and get capex funding and just go absolutely insane and start buying 20, 30, 40 million pounds worth of wine, I don't think I'd be able to sleep at night. So I actually quite like the constraint of having to choose and be a little bit more selective in what we're buying. I think also at the top end of the wine market, once you get up to, 100 to 500 to £1,000 a bottle, there's a fairly limited market for that. Again, probably 5, 6 years ago, that the Russian sort of market was quite hot. Now it's gone back slightly more into maybe some of the Middle East for the really fine wines, and then locally in the UK, obviously we've got the sort of the guys, the city workers with their big bonuses, or Premier League footballers, or those are the people that can go out and spend 10, 20,000 pounds on a case of wine without worrying too much. So it's I mean, that's a very, very niche part of our business, but obviously one that's fairly lucrative in terms of selling wine.
Yeah, and obviously your business is called Hard to Find Wines. What makes a wine hard to find in the digital world today? Is it allocations? Is it niche sort of connections? Seasonal availability? What makes it hard to find?
Yeah, again, we started with our sort of the international side, so going out to all regions around the world. So again, we started off predominantly with South Africa. And so we were looking at vineyards that were generally family owned, small estates where it was very hard, and they were very keen on looking for UK and European exporters. But so a lot of the wines that we even have today, have been on our books for 20 years. They might only produce 5 or 10,000 cases a year. So that was the real sort of niche that we started with, under the sort of hard to find sort of motto. Again, as we've gone on, I suppose even though we're dealing in slightly more commercial wines and better known wines, it's the fact that they are reasonably low yield in terms of what the vineyards are producing, and also we are holding stock which is back vintage stock, which is harder to get hold of. So a lot of the wines that we're putting to one side for maybe 5 to 7 years, and by the time we actually come to sell it at the end of that period, there may only be 2 or 3 merchants that have still got any stock of that particular vintage left. Again, it's
Yeah.
it's quite niche, but it's it's something that people do look for specific wines, and whether it be for an anniversary or just a wine that they absolutely loved. So it's it's a little bit niche, but does still keep in with our sort of hard to find name.
Yeah, absolutely. So just moving on a bit in terms of what you're actually doing on a day-to-day basis, what does your week look like? Is it customer service? Is it marketing? Is it tasting wines? Is it doing tasting sessions? How does your week get filled up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the start of my week is probably looking at what we've sold over the weekend, which is generally our sort of busiest time of the week. We get those orders out, we get those fulfilled, process those, which again, 5-6 years ago there'd have been a lot of manual entry. Now we're utilizing, whether it be through Shopify or Xero, which is our accounting software that we use, integrations, and just trying to minimize how much time we're spending on that sort of processing of orders, which then that obviously gives me more time to look at the analytics, see what we need to do, what we need to buy, and then our marketing side. So generally, I'd spend probably 1 or 2 days a week on our email marketing and looking at what we need to do with that. So yeah, I mean, a little bit of a sort of varied approach to what we're doing, but as much as we can on the back end, we're looking to try and get that as much automation as we possibly can, really, because it's otherwise it's very expensive in terms of employing staff with national insurance rises and obviously minimum wage in terms of someone that's going to be in the warehouse packing a box. So we need to try and streamline as much as we possibly can. And so that's really been the focus over the last couple of years, which has gone well so far.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a trend which is really accelerating at the moment, especially with AI. I mean, where people are finding time leakage, where they're finding that they're spending far too much time doing things that really doesn't necessarily need them to do. I'm thinking repetitive tasks or dealing with customer queries. I'm thinking even writing the tasting notes that we talked about, food pairings, things like this. But where do you think most of your time leakage is that you think, aspects such as AI are going to start to really help you and be a good buddy to help you do your day-to-day job better?
Yeah, I mean, very much already. We started using AI in terms of the tasting notes and that sort of side fairly early on, as soon as it started coming on the scene, probably a couple of years ago. So, I mean, that's probably freed my time up 50%. I mean, it's a huge benefit in terms of what it can do. I don't think it's necessarily just in terms of the time savings that you get. It's also gave us massive benefits in terms of SEO, which obviously Google SEO for us was always a massive part of trying to capture new business and making sure that if someone was looking for something quite particular, that they'd actually be directed to us and find it against the big boys like Majestic and the supermarkets. They're spending millions and millions of pounds to try and navigate against SEO and make sure that if you type in any wine, they're going to be top of the pile, even if they don't sell that specific wine. So I definitely think that in the last maybe sort of 12 months or even sort of 6 months in particular, where we are using AI in terms of unique content on the site, and making sure that all of our back end in terms of the e-commerce is working correctly. It's much easier now for us to get to the top of those pages. And obviously, with a lot of sort of Microsoft and some of the search facilities now, it's directly pointing you via their AI assistants to specific pages on the website. So it's circumnavigating the need for Google, really. So a lot of
Yeah.
people are now finding us, and we see from the back end of the website, obviously where the sort of pathways are coming from and where they're landing on our pages, a huge increase, probably 30-40% now more in terms of people are hitting the website on the page that they want, which obviously has a massive bump on effect in terms of they're in the right place. They're not struggling to search through a website for something that they're not sure where it is. And our conversion rate, I think, has gone up by around about sort of 20-25% over the last 6 months. So we're definitely seeing massive benefits from that sort of funneling that the AI can produce for you.
Yeah, I think this sort of switch from search engine optimization to answer engine optimization, as people are increasingly going to chat GPT, etc., to answer their queries. As you pointed out there, really, you're going to get a much smarter answer and a much more detailed, personalized sort of answer from those sort of tools than you get from a Google sort of search. So yeah, I'm impressed to see that that's been working for quite a while for you, and I think it's only going to continue to accelerate. Really, just generally, what are the biggest pressures hitting wine retail right now? You've talked about some of the increasing costs in NI in the UK, national insurance, and the tax on UK businesses and employers. What else is there that's really hitting the wine retail market and businesses right now?
Yeah, I mean, specifically for the wine industry, we've had increases in duty, which has just kept pushing prices up. Internationally, a lot of the wine that I'm buying is still the same price as I was buying it for 2, 3, 4 years ago. So a lot of the producers are actually keeping their prices fairly static. I think they understand that if they want to continue selling the quantities that they're selling, they have to be competitive. And unfortunately for the UK, we're just becoming more and more uncompetitive. So you can buy the same bottle of wine within Europe probably 15, 20% cheaper than here in the UK. So I can see where the inflation's coming from in the UK, because something like a bottle of wine or anything that's being hit with those duties is obviously going to be more expensive. So I mean that's one of our main problems in terms of the rest of the sort of landscape. Obviously, our concern is, will people have a disposable income? But other than that, in terms of logistics and most of the other parts of the business, it's actually better, I think, than maybe the press are making out. For us, really, it's those big sort of economic problems with cost of living and what have you. In terms of actually running a business day to day, it's as easy today as it was 10 years ago. It's more the customer that we're worried about, rather than necessarily the everything in between. But I think there's a lot of industries that are in the same position, and it's it is a tricky one. But I think we've seen
Yeah.
this over the last 20 odd years. There's these cycles, and it will come back again. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly a tough trading environment at the moment.
Sure. I'll ask you a bit more about customers in a second, but one thing you haven't mentioned there really, which I just wanted to ask you about specifically, was energy prices. I don't really know how much energy your storage of wine and the logistics around moving it around takes up. Is that a factor in your business costs?
Yeah, I mean, not massively for us. We did recently install solar PV panels on the warehouse, which obviously quite a big outlay, and that's negated any real issues for us. Yes, it's probably quadrupled in terms of the price we're paying for energy, and in our warehouse it is temperature controlled, so we use a reasonable amount of energy, probably maybe 25 to 30,000 pounds worth of energy a year. So we've just invested around about 52,000 pounds in a solar PV system, which can run the chiller units and the heaters when it gets very cold in the winter. Which obviously we've put a Tesla battery in as well, so helps running the evenings, and so far that has massively reduced our energy costs. But it's something that in the grand scheme of things, whether it's 5 or 20,000 pounds a year for energy, for us isn't a massive problem. But when you come to some of the, say, whiskey distilleries up in Scotland, their costs have just absolutely exploded, because it's a hugely energy draining process to distill spirits. So we've seen a massive effect in terms of prices of a lot of the spirits and whiskey and vodka and what have you that's produced here in Britain. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a concern, and we want it to be lower.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good that you've invested for the future in PV and stuff. So yeah, that's good to hear. Just going back to the customers then, obviously there are concerns there about available income, disposable income. What are you seeing any behavioural differences already? Are they trading down, buying less often? Are they just treating themselves less often, or treating wine as a treat purchase? What have you got any insights into that at all?
Yeah, I mean, what we've found is that our general amount of consignments has gone up. So our turnover actually over the last year or two has gone up by around about 5% a year. So we've definitely seen a slowing in growth in terms of turnover for us. But in terms of how that turnover is made up, very much where somebody would buy maybe a case of wine for £500, they may well now be buying just a couple of bottles, but they may still end up buying the case of wine, but just over a longer period of time. So it's definitely, in terms of the behaviour, it has changed. I don't think we've necessarily seen people trading down or spending massively less, but just probably a little bit more mindful of when and how they are spending. Again, we're slightly unusual in the wine industry that we don't supply restaurants and the on trade. So we're very much end user based, and actually for us, where a bottle of our wine is £50 off us, delivered to your door, and you can enjoy it with your wife at home, that £50 bottle in a restaurant would probably be £200. So in a strange sort of way, we're almost at a level at the premium end where, although it's a lot of money to spend on a bottle of wine, 50 or 100 or 200 pounds, you're actually saving money by drinking it at home. I think anecdotally, talking to some people within the trade, there seems to be a lot more people that are spending more time at home and not necessarily going out to a restaurant once or twice a week or more. And you can have a lovely meal at home. There's plenty of these new services that are coming through where they'll deliver you gourmet sort of style food to your home. And actually, talking to a couple of chefs recently, they've looked at either they have done or are looking to close down restaurants and do at home chef services, which obviously
Wow.
negates
Okay.
any of their costs. They can go and do a fantastic meal in someone's home, and still probably make more money than if they were running a restaurant with all the overheads.
Yeah, it does make sense, doesn't it? Gosh, and these changes, they obviously mean a lot to a business that has a lot of stock in storage, for example. I know certain wines won't last forever. Presumably, good forecasting is important for you. AI is obviously going to help with that in ways which are just too difficult to do manually at the moment. But where do you think it would be helping you the most? What data do you already have that could be used better? Is it just the sort of looking through the statistics of what you are already sort of gathering data on, or is it something different?
Yeah, I mean, we've probably now got around about 12 to 15 years worth of data in terms of our fine wine stocks that we're holding. So that's predominantly in database form. At the moment, what we tend to do is, obviously in the past, what wines have lasted however long, how long it's taken us to sell them. And so I can forecast manually how much wine should I take, how long is it going to be for us to sell it, and what sort of is going to be the final sales price. And so it's very much on a manual basis at the moment. I also generally will put on that database the drinking window that I think is on that wine. I have to say, with most fine wines, it tends to be anywhere from 5 to 10, right up to 30 to 40 years. So our stock isn't a particular worry in terms of it's going to go bad. But for us, it's more, is it worth us keeping it for 20 years? Because obviously, if it's going to peak at a certain price point, then there's just no point in us holding that stock and tying up that cash. So it's we've got plenty of data, and certainly I think looking forwards, something like AI will be able to help us generate reports much more easily, rather than me manually going through and sort of ticking boxes and thinking, "Right, that we need to list on the website in 2030 and that in 2035." If we can integrate those databases with our Shopify or our e-commerce, whatever we're going to be using at that stage, would be massively beneficial for us.
Yeah, I think it will go even further than that. I think, it'll be the sort of from the business that I've historically been involved with. We've had scenario sort of planning, and it's a difficult, repetitive thing to do. But for AI, it's going to be something which is just, it can look over huge amounts of data, your own private data, and of course, data that's out there in the real world, and give you real insights as to, scenarios and what the implications are. Give you the sort of information that you need to make the decisions. I don't think we're quite there to let AI make the decisions, but really be, as I said before, the buddy to you to enable you more readily. So you talked about using AI on marketing material like tasting notes. Can you share your basic workflow? Is it something that is easy for anyone to do?
Yeah. I mean, for me in the wine industry, last week, for example, I went down to a tasting in London. There was some new wines that had just come out. So I, with a pen and paper, manually write out my notes. which what does the wine taste like, what's the nose, again, longevity, what do I think the drinking window is, and that's very much my scrawls sort of quite quickly while we're interacting with other human beings. I then come back, use my iPhone to copy those scribbles, which it does amazingly well now, and I automatically forward that onto my computer, and from there we use an AI system on our e-commerce site. I can put in those keywords. There's little bits of information about where the wine's from, what were the growing conditions, what was the weather like, what's the soil, and all of those bits and pieces I can put in as a fairly bullet point sort of way of putting in the information, and within a click of a button then generates a wonderful, probably sort of 150 word product description, which encapsulates everything that would have normally took me probably an hour to put together. It's just an instantaneous thing. And another great part of it is, with obviously more fine wines, I'd use a more expert tone with it. But with something that's a little bit cheaper, maybe it's something that's a little bit more accessible and a sort of more fun tone. So AI, it has got that capability of, if you need to be technical and precise, it can give you that. If you want to be a little bit more fluid and easygoing, it can give you that as well. So it's a great way of us very quickly taking something which is in the real world and within minutes can be electronically transferred onto the website, and it gives us that very, very good, unique writing that obviously is something that's important, that you're not just copying and pasting any longer.
Yeah, and I guess these sort of outputs, they need to be authentic. They need to be truthful, trustworthy, distinctive, and creative even. I mean, do you trust it completely, or do you have some guardrails in place there to check over what's been written, that to make sure it's in I don't know, your style, your brand? Do you do that kind of thing, or is it actually almost, completely trustworthy?
Yeah, I mean, the only slight annoyance is that it's not still quite picking up the difference between English and Americans. For us, there's a lot of little sort of niggly spelling mistakes, like colour or flavour. Those sorts of little niggly bits, which I'm sure over the next coming few months, it'll pick up those little bits, and as people keep changing them, it'll learn that yeah, we are based in the UK, so that's how you spell flavor. So
Yeah,
there's little niggly bits like that. But I mean, generally speaking, I obviously skim read through what it's generating, but I mean, that's probably as much as I really do at the moment. In the early days, yeah, I'd actually sit there and read through what it had produced, but it's just got
yeah,
so good now that pretty much I do trust what it's writing.
yeah.
So other than a bit of a spell check and just a quick skim read, that's probably the limit of what I look at doing with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, it's interesting, really. I mean, you know, people who've been using Chat GPT for a while, they have almost taught, and probably, not almost, they have taught their Chat GPT how you like to have your answers, how to respond to you, and they even have different personas for you in different sort of projects. So I'm sure that kind of thing will come through with time on the system that you're using. That's really interesting. I mean, just quick fire, a couple of takeaways to leave us with? I mean, I'm thinking, what are you most excited about building or improving in your wine business this year? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the sort of technology point of view, I think we are at quite an exciting time, really. And from the early days 20 years ago, where we put together a website where we were using IT specialists. It was a very basic and maybe one page almost website. And slowly over the last 20 years, all the different steps forward that we've made have seemed quite big at the time, but looking back now, really quite tiny steps compared to what we've probably looked at in the last 12 months. So,
Yeah,
technology it's always been something that we've been willing to embrace, and obviously from our point of view, we're a small independent wine merchant in Shropshire, and it's the internet and technology has given us the ability to sell wine all over the country and all over the world. So it's an amazing thing that we've been very keen to. I think there's still a little bit of, in terms of some of the old guard, and whether it be in the wine industry or whichever industry you're in, that don't really quite still embrace the technological side, and they'd still rather be on a golf course and do a handshake, which obviously I'd like to do as well. But in terms of really pushing business forward, I think if you're not using technology to the best of its ability, then you're really losing out, and not just yourself losing out, you're losing out to the competitors, because anybody that you're competing against that's really driving forward just has this massive march on you. So, I think it's vital for companies to really look at technology in a way that how's it going to benefit you, and how's it going to drive your business forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the sort of development rate that we're going to see over the next year or two is just going to be beyond anything we've probably seen for maybe ever. I don't know. It's just building on built work. It's just accelerating so quickly. I think we'll be seeing digital twins of you, Mark, with all your expertise being put onto different platforms there for customers to talk to you about. And I think you talked about businesses needing to adapt, but I think the reality is that the population are starting to adapt. The customers are starting to adapt. They're starting to, the relatively young part of their population is already being brought up on this kind of thinking, and it does require a different way of thinking to get your head around how to get the best out of AI. So you've got to do what the customers are really looking for. Yes, okay, your competitors might be embracing technology and stealing a march on you, might think you'll survive, but the customers are also changing, and so that is probably just as important, I think. So Mark, thank you so much. It was really interesting to talk to you. A business I've not had any exposure to previously. I really enjoyed you having as a guest. You've really provided a really insightful and practical look at what it takes to run a wine business. Margins are obviously tight and time is even tighter. I'll drop a link to your business when I publish the podcast. So everyone, please do take a look at what Hard to Find Wines has to offer. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow Aligned Minds AI on LinkedIn for practical AI tips and updates on future episodes of Aligned on AI. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.